My wife is not a fan of video games, and that's okay. She is, however, a fan of mine, so when I asked her if I could do a video based on something she told me, she happily agreed. Ever since Callie and I got married, I have been doing everything I can to convince her to dip her toes into the world of exploring dungeons, leveling up, and jumping on things. So far I've had varying levels of success, but there are 2 games I can get her to play with me on a regular basis. One is Breath of the Wild, where she basically just takes the controller from me and rides horses through the mountains, or meanders through the plains on horseback, or walks around the beach. On a horse. She likes horses. The other game is Pode. If you haven't heard of it, Pode is a charming indie puzzle game where this little guy named Boulder helps this fallen star named Glow find her way home. On the surface, Pode is a 2-player puzzler not unlike Snipperclips or Piku Niku that has both players working together to clear stages and solve problems. Beyond that, I didn't expect much else when we started playing. But about an hour into the first few caves of Mount Felheim, Callie says something I didn't expect to hear, and that was, "This is really helping my OCD." Now, when she says this, she doesn't mean it in the sense that she is OCD about things and just loves organization, like a lot of people say. She actually has diagnosed obsessive-compulsive disorder, meaning, in most cases, she feels a gripping need to act on her obsessions about organization. OCD is not what we're here to talk about, but she felt it important for me to make that distinction. So, that aside, I had to see what about Pode was actually helping her, and that's when I decided to do some research on this charming little puzzler and find out what exactly makes it tick. The main mechanic of Pode is this ability that I call growth, which the game teaches you in the first room. Essentially, when you hold the right trigger next to some rocks, Boulder will give off a little aura that makes these crystallized structures form. The same goes for Glow, who instead will make plants and flowers bloom. In the second room, you learn that Glow's power can create giant leaves for platforms, and that Boulder can use his growth to lower columns and open a path forward. In the third room, you learn that Glow's aura will light up hints and that it'll make her glide after she jumps. You discover that Boulder's ability will let him slip through tunnels to reach higher ground. This first section makes it very clear that the growth ability will be your primary tool for the rest of the game. Much like Cappy in Mario Odyssey serves as a way to capture enemies and extend Mario's jump and collect coins and attack enemies, the growth serves as a way to create platforms and reveal hints and float after jumping and enter tunnels. Now, this multi-purpose idea is a bit of a double-edged sword because on one hand, it eliminates any ambiguity on what you have to do in most of the early levels. If you get stuck, just try using growth on something. Not much else you can do. But on the other hand, just holding the right trigger doesn't really take a ton of skill. I'm one of the first to criticize games for boring inputs, like climbing sequences where you just hold up on the joystick until you finally get where you're going. But in Pode, simply holding a button actually works quite well, mainly because of the lack of effort it takes. Let me explain. Social media is highly addictive because it provides a large amount of dopamine for a very small amount of effort. It doesn't take much work to unlock your screen and check Instagram for likes on your latest post, just like it doesn't take much work to hold R and watch flourishing crystallized scenery blossom in front of you. The growth mechanic serves as a simple way to progress in each level, sure, but developer Henchman and Goon deliberately reward the player for its use alone by making the mechanic itself visually stunning and satisfying. It'd be like holding up on the joystick in Ocarina of Time, but instead of seeing Link's repetitive climbing animation, you also saw Morgan Freeman begin to smile down upon you and start narrating your adventure.
I could see why some people took him for annoying. He had a walk and a talk that just wasn't normal around here.
The combination of a mechanic that doesn't really require mastery and feedback on that mechanic that is just gorgeous to look at makes for a really relaxing time. Pair that with a soundtrack from the same guy that did the music for Journey, and you've got yourself a really zen experience. But the growth mechanic doesn't relax you so much that you zone completely out of the game because there's still really strong puzzles to solve that keep you engaged. There's this whole section where Glow's ability specifically will melt down mushrooms and grow shrubbery in their place, but doing so also reveals key pieces that Boulder needs to open the next door. So when Callie wanders around the room growing the shrubbery and tidying things up, she is simultaneously creating a beautiful environment and helping both of us get to the next room. In fact, I want to say it was this room that she first mentioned it was helping her OCD, and after doing some research, I think I know exactly why. There were several times in our playthrough where the room's puzzle itself had been solved, yet I was still waiting on her to make sure that everything that could grow had grown. She couldn't move on until she knew she had made as much of the room beautiful as she could. Much like those of you that can't go to the next stage until you find all the secrets or typically strive for that sexy 100% completion, my wife was experiencing something called the Zeigarnik Effect. Way back in the 1920s, Russian psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik gave 140 children simple tasks to do, like puzzles or math problems. She allowed 70 of them to complete their task and made the other 70 stop when they were only halfway through. Afterwards, she asked the children how much of each task they remembered. On average, the kids that finished their assignment only remembered about 10% of what they had worked on. But for those that were cut off, on average, they remembered about 80% of the tasks they worked on. Essentially, since the tasks weren't completed, they stuck with the kids. It was sort of burned into their memories. You know, I don't know what happened next, but I like to imagine that Dr. Bluma gave the halfway kids a chance to finish their work if they wanted to, but anyways, this need for completion is driven by a psychological need to have a positive outcome. Psychologist Perry Buffington elaborated on Zeigarnik's work by saying that people tend to remember negative experiences and feelings much longer than positive ones. Moreover, people also feel a greater level of impact from negative messages than positive ones. So the need to complete each level or each room in a game is a lot of times an avoidance response. The player doesn't want to go on knowing that they didn't finish what they were working on. They're trying to keep that itch from developing in the back of their mind. And I think the reason Callie found growing plants and flowers in Pode so therapeutic is not only because it was beautiful, but also because it allowed her to start and finish tasks in a safe environment with minimal effort. The growth mechanic served as the magical crayon in a self-working coloring book. It let her open and close the loop of completion over and over again. And like our buddy Pokio taught us in this video, any mechanic that lets you scratch that mental itch over and over from simply doing the mechanic itself is incredibly satisfying and makes every new task the game gives you a delight to take on. I think what's especially lovely about Pode is that the growth mechanic and the aesthetics create two layers to every cave and every puzzle. Layer 1, of course, is the actual puzzle itself. What sequence of actions do I need to take to progress? How do I need to arrange the pieces to solve the problem? But intertwined with that is Layer 2, the process of finding those pieces and the beauty that goes with it. In a lot of puzzle games, the pieces are right in front of you and it's your job to put them together correctly. But in Pode, you may need to uncover the pieces or manipulate them by using this dazzling growth mechanic. And it's clear that the developers wanted Pode to be a game that could really lean into its visual appeal as a complement to its puzzles. In an interview with PS4blog.net, Henchman and Goon mentioned, "We also want this to be a game where you're not necessarily always driven by the need to progress. Sometimes it's just nice to watch the flowers grow." I think they've created an experience where the journey really is greater than the destination. And I love that, because the simplicity of the growth mechanic is approachable for my wife, and really anyone with limited gaming experience. It doesn't require her to master crazy sequences of precise button presses or wrap her mind around the complexities of the modern day JRPG battle system, which, even for me, is just... whew.
Don't forget me!
Here, she can just tidy things up, paint a beautiful, completed picture, and enjoy some zen music along the way. Meanwhile, I can still find the challenge of the game in solving the puzzles. The 2 layers for each room works perfectly for the 2 of us, because I can tackle the puzzle and she can tackle the landscaping, all while still working together to ultimately find the solution. I'll admit that it's not for everyone, but if you need something enjoyable to play with a friend that maybe isn't a gaming veteran like yourself, Pode is a great option. And for Callie and I'd say it's tailor-made. Hey, thanks for joining me today. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and check out some of my other work. If you like what you saw, make sure to leave a like and share the video. That really goes a long way in helping out the channel. And be sure to let me know what you think in the comments. I'll see you next time.